We are live.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our January 29th school board meeting, which we are beginning we are beginning it promptly at 6 o'clock. Roll call, Karen Cronwell. Here. Chris Robinson. Here. Katie Avalos. Here. Carla Pennington Cross is here. Danielle Bailey is absent and excused. She is very sick and is home recovering from, something, whatever it is that's been going around. All right, item C, Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, you may stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you wish.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Item 1D, agenda approval.
I move to approve today's agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 1E, approval of board meeting minutes for January 8th. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve with the caveat that there needs to be discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
I would just ask that my last it is CROWELL throughout.
Oh, yep. Oh, Crownwell. We can probably autocorrect. We need to discuss whether we want to approve that change.
I'd like to question it. All right, anyone opposed to that, the edit? All right, so there's a motion to approve the minutes with edits to the spelling of Karen's last name to make it accurate. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item F, meeting grounding. I would just invite everyone to take a couple of breaths, sit up straight, stack. We have a lot of work today. Breathe in the good vibes, breathe out the rest of the day, and let's be present and move as efficiently as we can through our excellent agenda. Thank you, Anna, for working with me to make a good agenda today. All right. On to item 2, public comment. At this time, visitors may speak on any non-agenda item if you wish. Anyone? Mr. Martin, please state your name and address for the record.
Wayne Martin, 7275 North Fort Washington Road, apartment number 1221, Glendale, Wisconsin, 53217. Your comments, and one, Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development has new grant out that might be applicable to you all if you want additional tech ed equipment, the Wisconsin Path Forward grant. The print out, I'll just leave that here. And then the other day, Nicolay had a board meeting and they were stating that they had the opposite problem that we're having here. They have too much money in their 110 balance. And I know we at Glendale-River Hills, we have, I believe it's, not sure if it's a bond line of credit with Wisconsin board, like 6%. I was wondering potentially if you could ask Nicolay for a loan at a lower percent interest rate than the state is offering, hopefully save money, and what you do have to pay in interest would be going to Nicolay rather than back to the state of Wisconsin.
That is creative. Yeah.
Then I have some notes on that. If you can read my chicken scratch, I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anyone else? All right, moving on to section 3 of our agenda, equitable stewardship. Item A is about open enrollment for 25-26.
All right, so the school board for our policy 5113 needs to approve open enrollment seats for the following school year, the 2025-26 school year. in the January meeting, so I presented information, during the 1/8/2025 meeting. I also included an update to the board on, special education weighted caseload information, as that information tends to shift as students qualify for special education or have additional services added to their IEPs. So that has all been updated for your review. The administration does recommend that a motion to approve the allocation of 0 open enrollment seats for grades K4 through 8th grade for this upcoming school year, 2025-26, as outlined in the open enrollment recommendation for non-special education and special education seats, as it's attached to item 3A.
So to clarify, that's 0 new open enrollment seats, right? Students who are already here on open enrollment will
Yeah,
keep their
those-
seats.
Those students who are on open enrollment will remain, their seats will remain, we just will not be opening any additional seats next school year.
All right, is there a motion?
The upcoming school year 25-26, as outlined in the open enrollment recommendation for non-special education and special education seats as attached.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
I guess I'd like to just talk through, looking at the numbers, I just wondered what it would be like. I'm worried about what might happen at the federal level, to be honest. And, thinking about revenue, and I just wondered in looking at first grade, I know we typically, the practice is to accept them young. I think first grade is still pretty young and we can still, develop them, very well. I just wondered about adding 5, because we have 5 sections. We're a little bit under, it's one of the lower things. I just wondered if we could talk about that.
Essentially, I mean, it is an option that the board has available to them to add those seats. It's not going to change anything around staffing. Like, staffing would not change that.
Right.
You would be looking at, a portion. So when we have students open enrolling, they come in with approximately $9,000, right? Is the roughly $9,000. In comparison to about 13,000, which is our student population, right? So you're going to be bringing that in for that money in. And so, and then we have a portion of money that would be going out, right? And so, I mean, when you're looking at that, you're looking at adding revenue, but you're not adding revenue at the same level as you would for a resident student. And so, there would be some additional funds that will come in through 5 students there. I mean, that is accurate. If that was the way that the board wanted to proceed with that recommendation. Also understanding that the cost of educating students depending, it can vary, right? Like what it takes to educate a student if they need different supports and intervention and things like that, it can end up that could exceed that cost, right?
Katie, thoughts?
I feel like in the fall, there was a meeting where we were kind of talking about numbers and there was a thought before we started using this formula, which I love. Because it gives us like a truly informed mathematical query, right? That we might be looking at having some open enrollment seats. I guess when we talk about the 9,000 that comes in with an open enrollment seat compared to the true cost of educating, does that translate as a loss for us? Or is it somewhat of a wash because the lights are going to be on, the engineers are going to be in the building, the teacher's going to be in front of the students?
I don't know if you want to add to that, yeah.
If we don't need to increase staffing and if they don't have needs that would exceed that $9,000, that piece of staffing, then it would not add additional costs. They would just be another student, an additional student in the classroom that we already had open with those costs.
And as an additional point of clarification, if we were special education seats available, which would be consistent with the numbers of our special education workload right now. But that would then mean that if one of those students were to qualify for special ed, that they would have to be,
If we do.
they would
if
not be
we-
able to stay.
If we determine that we don't have room in our program, so if an IEP is assigned to that student and it requires additional supports that are going to require additional funding, then yes, we would make the return back to the resident district.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
And Katie? I'm just kind of letting it rattle around in my brain for a bit. Chris?
A question, I know that, you're doing K4 registration. Is there anything in those numbers that is surprising or?
No,
Pretty
after opening, we opened up registration on the 13th, I believe within like a week and a half, we had about 36.
We're over 40.
We're over 40 now. We're over 40 now. So we have a nice pool of enrollment that's already come in, and this is early, right?
Right,
And so I think that's a really positive sign for us.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, what I end up thinking about is, the benefit of zero open enrollment is that you're starting to right size the classes and our student body. And as we look down the pike at potential referendum needs and capital planning, there's a benefit to right sizing our classes to what our population is, right? Open enrollment can create sort of a false elevation of our community's needs. So I'm thinking about that as as it rattles around in my head, as you say. And the other thing I think about is just, I continue to, I chafe at the idea of separate open enrollment seats for kids with IEPs and kids without. If we can't afford to let in kids with IEPs, then we shouldn't allow open enrollment. That's kind of how I feel. Do you know what I mean? If we can't afford kids with IEPs, then we can't afford any kids on open enrollment. It just feels like maybe that's simplistic. It feels a little bit like a justice issue, right? It feels, I'm not saying it is discriminatory, we're allowed, it's legal, but it just, it rubs me wrong. So that's kind of,
doesn't mean that.
well, yeah, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's not a liability risk, but it doesn't feel right to me. And I feel like we should be consistent. And so that's kind of where my head rattles to, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's like, I liken the classroom to like an airplane, right? One student or 20 student, the fixed costs are largely the same, right? On the other hand, if we have a heavy special education load, that extra student can be marginally harder for even the regular ed classroom, right? Where we have a lot of integrated services. And so keeping that load lighter for, the teacher who's in the class full time can help with managing those students we do have already who have special education needs and some bigger challenges that need support. So it's a change to not have open enrollment seats. I'm pretty comfortable with it right now because of those things that are rattling around in my head. Yeah.
I think because of where we are right now, where we're trying to right size, where we're trying to right size pretty much everything. And the math that they presented to us, which is wonderful. I love that. Like, that's the first time I've seen a mathematical reason why we're doing this or not doing it. It makes sense to me to not push it. And then we see where we are at the end of this year and we see how it goes. And then next year, if we can open up seats, we'll also have a better handle on, to your point, the federal situation like next year. And then if we can open seats, then we can open seats. But right now, I think we really need to figure out where we sit. Because and also, that's what we told them when we told the community when we were running the referendum, is that this is a balancing year. We're gonna figure it out, figure out where we sit. And not make big, moves.
But yeah, it's $45,000. That's almost a starting teacher's salary. That's the hard part, right? Recognizing that income could make a difference. Yeah, Yeah, it's a fair question. Well, so you have the power to make a motion to amend if you wish to, or we can vote on the motion that's pending. It's,
No, we can vote on the motion.
okay, any further
I
discussion?
think I know where everybody stands.
Any visitor comments on this agenda item? I appreciate your question, Chris. Thanks for getting us thinking about it, kind of helping me understand better. I feel more confident about my vote now. All right. The pending motion is a motion to approve an allocation of 0 open enrollment seats for both regular education and special education for grades K4 to 8 for the 25-26 school year. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. On to item 3B, Good Hope property update.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to indicate that we presented to the board on 12/18 around the Good Hope property. And the board developed some further inquiry that they wanted there and also some direction to administration. So we're going to be looking at some of the questions that were there and sort of our next steps in terms of looking at how we're going to proceed with providing even further answers to some of those questions.
All right, well, Mike Acker with Cadence Consulting, good to be here. Thanks for having me. Continued conversations when we were together last month, the board had a couple specific questions about property use today, about how Fund 80 is functioning currently. There was a little bit of dialogue around different strategies to get some professional opinions in on value, if that were a potential next step. And so we have some updates on kind of all fronts to walk through. So I'll go ahead and take the lead, but I know the district team has also put a lot of time into this as well. So feel free to jump in as we're going through here. So the first question on the top of this slide was the current use of the green space, the fields that are on that site, right? So we know that, again, that property is 2 parcels. We have the portion to the east, which is the parking lot and the building. There is a soccer field or green space east of the building. It's kind of tucked away, but that's 1 parcel. And then we have the western parcel, which is really all the ball diamonds and tennis courts and kind of open space. So right now, as the district looked into this, there is no current structured agreements in place for use of that field. Okay, so we don't have any rec programming, no one renting that formally from the district. Okay. There certainly is a number of indications, and there are signs that those spaces are being used, right? The ball diamond looks as though folks are using that, and they're just not coordinating that directly. The district not giving formal approval to use that. So it looks like it's serving some purpose for the community, but not necessarily a structured purpose. Okay, so no rent coming in, no formal agreements there. There is no fencing or locks or anything keeping anybody out, right? So obviously, it is an asset, I'm sure, to the neighborhood and to others, just as, you know, green space in some way, but nothing structured. Okay, so that was, I think, the first question I was asked. Any follow-ups to that from the board, or certainly on the district side, anything you'd like to highlight?
I did. And so with that, I guess, and this is historical, I've not paid any attention recently, but I did think that Nicolay Rec was using that space. I feel like there's football there sometimes, but I haven't paid attention for a really long time. But we're not reaping any benefits, even if it's being used, is the ultimate response.
Yeah.
Only liability risk when strangers come on the property. Yeah.
And that's and the reality is that's probably that is very common for school properties, right? Playgrounds and asphalts and basketball hoops and stuff, right? That happens all the time. In some places you have, like back here, there is soccer that uses it and run space, and that's, you know, a thing, but the vast majority of the time it's just seen as available space. And if no one's using it, a lot of times teams show up and start practicing or using it in other ways. Okay, so nothing structured there. For the second point, I may turn this one over to Michelle and Anna here to talk a little about the Fund 80 Community Fund.
Yeah, so just for some history, Fund 80, which is designated for community use, right, and services, has historically been used to pay for and support the salaries for basically the cleaning crew that goes over to the Good Hope Building, the general maintenance and service and repairs. A year ago, the board made a decision to levy money into Fund 80. Which is, money was levied there and that money has been used for those purposes. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that that money, even if it's transferred out at some point, gets transferred back in. So the money for Fund 80 that was levied from our taxpayers is still in Fund 80 at this point and serving the purpose of supporting this building, not necessarily so we can make profit, right? It is there to help support the general maintenance and cleaning of it. And I just want to make sure that there was clarity around that, because I know some questions arose during our last meeting around that. More specifically, I'll have Michelle kind of step in and give a breakdown of our starting Fund 80 balance and where that sits.
Fund 80 started the year with a fund balance of $2.28 million. And then we have lease revenue coming in, approximately it's budgeted for $300,084 for the year. And operating expenditures are budgeted at $400,000. The 4-year average for those is $325,740. And then we do have capital facility needs, that are listed there, showing a 10-year maintenance, costs of recommendations of $6,636,000, and then building recommendations, upgrades and repairs, $3,170,100.
I believe that latter portion was an update, right? So we provided some of that content in the last board update as well. Okay, any questions there?
Could you just remind me the difference between the 10-year maintenance and the building recommendations? How that, I don't get quite how that's not folded into the 10-year maintenance. Is that more immediate?
Yeah, so, yep, I can jump in there. So the building recommendations were coming forth as code required updates.
Got it.
Okay, and things that'll be triggered as soon as we start renovating.
Thanks.
Okay, yep, so I think the key takeaway is if we do nothing, just stay status quo, keep with our current tenants, don't make significant renovations. If that is the path, then likely that 3.1 million isn't triggered. But as soon as we go and start renovating, you should see the full 9.8 is what needs to be planned.
It's like ADA compliance.
Yeah. I just needed my background knowledge
Yep,
refreshed.
yep. Okay. So the next set of questions had to start to look at valuation of the property. Okay, so as the board is starting to consider various options to go forward, there have been a number of dialogues around what would happen if we divest in that property. And or some version of divesting in that property. Okay, and so right now, the district's working, and there'll be a recommendation or a discussion around bringing on a professional service, real estate service to come in and assess this from an appraisal standpoint. Okay. And what is structured right now is to request that be delivered through a kind of a number of options, if you will. Okay, so what would the value be if both parcels are sold combined with the building there? What would it be if we separate the parcels, right, and sell one of them or either of them, okay, individually with the building? And then the same combination, either combined or separated without the building. So is there value or strategy for the board to consider in going ahead and demoing that building, raising it, and then selling the empty parcel? Okay, so just for data purposes, let's just understand what that would look like. Previously, Colliers had supported some initial estimates based on the size and age of that building, that a full demolition of that, just raising it, would be right around $360,000 as a cost. Okay, so just to kind of level that, like if that were the path, there would be an investment up front by the district to go ahead and do that as a part of the real estate transaction to sell that site.
And how do those numbers compare to numbers today? I mean, I know you don't have, like, Do you feel like they would be in the same ballpark?
Likely, yeah. I mean, they provided this last year, so it wasn't that long ago. It was a unit cost for volume of a building that size, of which they, work within on a regular basis. So I'm confident in that. They also had an additional $20,000 to clear the parking. So if you did scrape the asphalt and just get it back to a grass area again, or a gravel area, there was that additional cost. Okay, so that's just to kind of push up against, once you have an understanding of the value of the property without the building, what is that offset as a investment as part of that? Okay. And then lastly, to also work with this vendor to look at current market rate lease values. Okay, so right now we know we have current leases in place or agreements in place with these vendors. And if in fact these tenants were to sign short-term or long-term leases with the district, what would market rate look like, and how might that be structured? Just have a real estate professional in to support that discussion as well. So I think the ask would be to have that partner provide that as a service as what they're delivering in their report. Anything else to add there? I like. Okay.
So to move forward with the real estate assessment approval, Cadence had investigated real estate appraisals in the spring of 2024 based on some board direction at that time. And pricing quotes were between 5,500 and about 7,000 for this work to be done. We reached out to the Nicholson Group, which has worked with other school districts, and they quoted us 5,500. We did ask them for some additional scenario information, in particular looking at the structure of the lease and looking at zoning changes as well, just to understand what that would look like, which I think are important pieces of information to provide the board with a full picture of what is there and how does that impact us, right? In accordance with policy 6320, it's indicated that the board must be informed of competitive bids, so wanting to bring that tonight to make sure that you are informed that this is the cost that's associated with moving forward to gather that information. Questions regarding that?
I'm clearly in the wrong business.
So we're gonna go forward with the appraisal.
Right, and so then the plan for that would be then, once that appraisal is completed, then that information would come back to the board, likely within closed session, because it would be confidential information around the sale of property,
Right.
which falls under the statutes for closed session. And you would be able to have an opportunity to look at some of that information to help inform decision making around next steps.
Do you have a sense of how long that will take?
I believe they told us between 60 days. So they're actively working on it right now. My hope would be to have it, back to the board as quickly as possible, and hopefully in shorter order.
Okay, any visitor comments or questions before we move on?
Regarding Good Hope?
Right, regarding this
Yeah.
particular item.
Yes.
Yes, please approach, or you can stand, whatever makes you comfortable. Should he approach the mic?
My name is John Peerless, 2315 West Good Hope. I'm one of the tenants at Good Hope School. A couple things. Number one, I wish the mayor was here because I would love to address him directly. But I was very much taken back at the last meeting in December. He made it very much sound like all us tenants are extreme profit centers, and we're taking advantage. That's the way I took it anyways, that then we're taking advantage of Glendale in the school district. When I first talked with Jim Beckman, I've been a tenant since 2018, and Jim, said we are here for programs to help the community. I had no problem sharing. One, you don't get into the bridge business to make money without taking a salary. My whopping net profit last year was under $25,000. I'm in it for the enjoyment and I'm in semi-retirement, if you will, so I'm fine with that. But, again, I was just taken back by his comment. Is there a timeline that the board is looking at as far as coming up with a decision, one way or the other? Just a ballpark. I mean, are we looking at years, 6 months, 2 years? Just,
I think in terms of the board making a decision about how to move forward with the property, we really need to look at all of the information that comes forward, right? In terms of understanding that we have people leasing and in the case of, your work and the work of the daycare and the work of the high school as well, and the dance studio, in all fairness to our tenants, we would have to give you a substantial amount of notice so that you could plan accordingly, right? Especially when we would be looking at those other pieces. I would like to be able to provide some clarity on that. My goal would be to try to get some clarity before the end of our fiscal year, but hopefully sooner than that.
thank you.
And speaking for myself as a board member, I would want to treat all of you with respect, obviously. I do not think you're taking advantage of us. I think you are good tenants and you pay your rent, and I have heard no complaints. So I think I can't speak for other board members, but I'm not aware of anyone who wants to cut and run on the instant. So we'll do our very best to ensure you have time to plan forward. Anybody else wish to speak to that?
Just in support of what you said.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks for coming.
Yep.
Thanks for speaking. Okay, good. Thank you for the update. Very helpful. Thanks, Mike. On to the freight train is going to keep moving. On to item 3C. Recommended approval of revenues, expenditures, and payroll for November and December.
I'm sorry, there's a second component. Is that just, so the rest of that was just from the previous
Yes.
presentation for our
Yes.
reference?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Like, there's a lot more slides.
There's been a lot of content. We've like.
Those slides have historical value.
Yeah.
Just can't let go of them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, 3C.
The financial reports are for the month of December, and the year-to-date ones are through December, from July through December. Revenues and expenditures by fund. The general fund expenditures is about 38%, 38.05, which is what it should be at this time of the year. The majority of the payroll and benefits is a major part of the expenditures in Fund 10. And the way that our teaching staff and school year staff are paid, then that's where they would be at. There's been 9 payrolls for the majority of our staff. Thank you. So then in looking at the other major fund, Fund 27, that is at the same spot.
I'll be right back. I'll keep going.
So, if you have any questions on those, let me know. And I can put together a chart too of what we should be looking at percentage wise at each month. Do that. December accounts payable disbursement checks. And this includes payroll and regular checks. We're looking at a total balance sheet amount of $482,470.65. Revenue of $2,034.41. And what that is it's an offset on our Aramark bill, our food service bill. It's revenues, commodities, government commodities that they apply to our bill, and we record that as a revenue. And then expenses of $543,175.57 for a total of $1.123 million dollars. And if anyone has any specific questions on those disbursements, feel free to ask. Yes.
I just want to compliment, I went to a session at WASB on budget and, they said, they gave this complicated way of being able to annotate so board members knew what they were, and we've got that, so.
Nailed That's good to hear because one of the speakers there was at the luncheon and he said, I was speaking to everyone's board today. He's like, you might have more work to do. Okay, summary of pay benefits and disbursements. And this is the one, kind of summarizing, pulling information off of different reports of Skyward. And if you kind of if you look at December, the amount expended on payroll, gross pay, benefits, other payments, retiree payments, AP checks and ACH, you'll see we expended $1,717,786.43. And in November, it was $1,774,543. October was a little less, 1.6 million. But if you look at those, the very first lines, the payroll gross and then benefits, you see that we're pretty much consistent each month. And even in the AP checks is pretty consistent, October, November, December. So I think that's something important to look at is to understand what do we usually see for payroll and benefits.
What does AP stand
Accounts payable.
for? Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And if you look at the third from the last line, ACH, you'll see that in December, it's $143.04. And those are payments that are coming out of our bank. Now that we have the credit card running through the AP process, that has decreased. You'll see that now on the check register. Then the December cash balances. Let me pull that up. And the general checking had a net had 200,755.70 at the end of December, and that what we did borrow out of our line of credit, as we knew that would be a low month. The majority of our income revenue is through property taxes, and those started coming in January. So that wraps up those reports. Do you have any questions?
Board members, any questions? Visitors, looking at you, Mr. Martin?
In the AP report, there were a few line items for $0.00. Were those voided items or something else? There were a couple on, I think it's page 16 to IRS, or one to Amazon for 0 and a couple to Department of Revenue.
Yeah, if you, no, that's a credit card. 16?
The Amazon one is 19,
Yeah. I think for the other one.
and 15, it's.
Yeah, if there's an account number listed with a $0 amount, that could come out 0. I was looking for continuous void checks. Sometimes if you have so many items on a check, then it's gonna show one of them as being 0. But that's not the case, but I will check on that and give you the exact answer for those items next month.
Then there's several negative amounts in the Amazon credit card list. Is that inappropriate use of the credit card that's being corrected, or are those just legitimate refunds that the district sent back?
Those are refunds. Yes.
Then last one, I saw several line items for orphans pest control, is that a preventative thing or do we have a pest problem?
These are the pests, right?
That's for us.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. All right. So we need a motion.
I move to approve revenues, expenditures, and payroll for December 2024 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Moving on to item 3D, 25-26 budget planning update.
The district just finished the the second Friday, January pupil count. And in the equalization aid formula, it uses several factors, one of them being the January count to determine the aid. So this is the number that we have in planning for next year's aid. It's also used to kind of see where we at compared to where we were in the fall, and we're very close to where we were in the fall. And I'll go over the results of the second Friday, kind of what we're seeing. Enrollment was 975, and in comparison, in September, it was 973. Open enrollment in tuition waivers, in January 93. It was 93 in September. And then open enrollment out in tuition waivers, 103. And then in September, it was 106. So we had some students no longer enrolled. I believe they probably moved to their district. The resident count was 985 in January, and in September it was 986. There was a slight difference in the FTE. January's FTE was 945, and the FTE in the fall was 947. So we're still, consistent, and we anticipate nothing really changing, from our projections for like 8th grade graduating out and the students that are coming in, that we expect to see consistency in the revenue limit numbers. And then I attached or linked in the budget planning calendar. That's what I.
Thank you. Can you explain to me for like the 80th time, I just have trouble retaining it, what the difference is between enrollment, resident count, and resident FTE?
Okay, so our enrollment are students actually attending school in the district. And in getting our resident count, we subtract out the open enrollment in and tuition waivers. And then we add back our students who are open enrolled out to somewhere else or receiving a tuition waiver. So there's students enrolled in the public school system through the open enrollment or tuition waiver. Those are our residents, so we count them for our revenue limit. So that is the difference. That's how we get our resident count. And then getting our resident FTE, our preschool students are 0.5.
Right.
Our 4K are 0.6 FTE. In the rest of our students are 1 full FTE.
Got it.
We do, I believe, have a 4K student attending another district resident. So it's our resident child, and they're 0.5 because that's the program that they're attending.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thoughts or questions? Any audience questions? Thank you, Michelle. You're welcome. Thank you for the clarity around them. All right, item 3E, vehicle lease buyout approval.
The district has been leasing two vehicles, a Chevrolet Silverado truck and a Chevrolet van for district use. And those leases are up. And we have the option to buy those vehicles at their residual value, or return them, you know, they're still in use. The Silverado truck has a current mileage of 9,227 miles. The Blue Book value on that, from a private party is 25,251 to 28,642. And the district could purchase that vehicle at 21,139.60. The Chevrolet van has a current mileage of 20,070 miles, and that Blue Book price is 21,489 to 25,182. The purchase price on that is 13,604.07. Administration is recommending purchase of the vehicles at the residual value for 34,743.67. And then something I didn't put in here. Facilities said that they're in very good condition. They're running well. They regularly have them maintained. So we're not having problems with them that we would want to have.
Karen?
I would just say thank you for the comparisons so that we know that these are valuable, it's a good price.
Yes.
And I know you both to know the answer to this, but there's room in the budget for this.
I'm assuming that this would ultimately save us a little bit of money. I'm assuming if we're leasing them, we're paying monthly lease payments.
Do you know what the monthly lease cost is?
I believe it was about 386 per vehicle, 350, 380 per vehicle.
And continuing to lease is not an option. It's either to give back or purchase.
I believe the 60 months is over, but we are being charged until we do something with them, so we are continuing to pay at least.
Okay. Is the van the one that the foundation helped fund, or this is a different one? It's like a cargo van? Okay.
Both of these vehicles are used for maintenance of the building and moving supplies in between the buildings. So, think about our gymnastics.
Yep.
Equipment, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So they're used on a pretty frequent basis, but miles are very low because it's just in between the schools.
Right.
And the truck is also equipped with snow removal equipment. So they're very it's kind of an essential part of the crew. So I think when you look at if we were to move to something else, we would be looking at an increase in lease payment versus a buyout, which would then allow us to probably keep those vehicles for another 10 or so years. So when we think about total overall cost, to your point, Katie, we'd be looking at a cost savings versus us continuing to just output money for their use that we're going to need regardless.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve the purchase of the vehicles as presented.
Second. All right. Any further discussion from board members? Any visitor questions or comments? All right, pending is a motion to approve the buyout of the lease, what are we calling it, a buyout? Or buyout of leases of two vehicles, that truck and the van, for a total of $34,743 dollars. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that was a lot of business. Thank you, everyone, for being efficient. We're on to category 4, exceptional staff and leadership. I propose we get through the superintendent update and then take a break. Then, does that work for you?
I think we move into closed session after the.
Yes,
Okay.
so that's where we'll
Okay.
fit in a break. Okay, item 4A, superintendent update.
All right, just want to update the board, from, the superintendent's office in terms of looking at, information and activities that I've been up to. So, the WASB State Convention was something that I attended. I had the opportunity to do that with some of the other board members here. Michelle Brown was there. And some of the key takeaways of the workshops that I attended were as follows. So, looking at some of the legal challenges to the 2024 Title IX, resulting in sort of the implementation of the 2020 Title IX regulations right now. So, thinking about what that means and investigating that from a policy standpoint. But then also understanding that our student non-discrimination policy also continues to protect student rights. So making sure that we continue to have our students protected in underneath the umbrella of our various policies that exist. Our schools in Wisconsin are working cooperatively as a way to pool salary and benefits information to provide market value ratings, which is a way to support kind of a proactive approach in terms of thinking about how we set teacher salaries. So being able to also have some level of transparency with our staff to know whether or not their salary is falling within a market value above or below and where that sits. Which could also help us with the kind of thinking about the goal of equitable stewardship and making sure that we are paying people fairly and appropriately based on fair market value. I also had the opportunity to go to a workshop. I believe Danielle was also there with me on looking at some of those local metrics of success, knowing that the board exam is something that the market is kind of moving on and it's a standardized test, and many districts are starting to move to more of a concept of a sort of an individualized report card that gets at more whole child growth and development, which is one of our pillars. So there's some really good examples of what other districts are doing and how they're utilizing those metrics and having their internal systems basically generate a customizable report card that exists at the student level and parent level, but then also at like a school and district level as well. So there's some really interesting work that's being done there that I know the administrative team here will be interested in taking a look at and thinking about how we start to make some movement around that. Also looked at organizational structure ideas to support shared leadership district-wide and spreading the load of leadership through our organization to our teachers, which provides them with more voice and agency within our organization. So those are some really interesting takeaways. And then also tips for marketing school success through social media, which is kind of the promotion of telling our story and telling it in a really good way, because there's so many good things happening here. The other thing I've been working on is I provided our staff with information about their procedures for government officials, including ICE officers, to our schools, and the process that they should follow in our policies that guide those processes and procedures, so that there's clarity that if there's governmental agencies, including ICE officers, that they follow our visitor protocols, that they are also contacting the superintendent of schools to intervene in that to determine whether or not there is a judicial warrant in place or not, right? I have completed the community newsletter that will be going out to our entire Glendale community. And so I believe it's heading out to publishing, right?
Sounded like February 6th or 10th it should go out.
Okay, February 6th through 10th would be the time frame in which it will start hitting mailboxes, featuring some of the things that we're doing around our strategic plan, as well as highlights of some of the good things that are happening within our schools.
Looks fantastic. Thanks for sharing the draft with us.
Yeah, no
Love it.
problem, no problem. It's very bright and colorful. It's had some edits and some other eyes on it too, which has been really helpful to Diana's got a keen eye for design, so thank you to her. And then I recently, this past Monday, met with State Legislator Deb Andraka with our partner district's administration to discuss school funding. Representative Andraka sits on the Joint Finance Committee, so I'm getting some of her insights and also being able to share with her some of the key areas that we see as administrators of public schools that are funding issues for our schools. Primarily a lot of discussion around increasing the special education funding and making sure that there's advocating for that at the state level. Concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments from board members? Any visitor questions or comments? Okay, we are now, let's see, on to item 4B. So would anybody like to make a motion with respect to closed session?
I move to recess into closed session per section 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to discuss the interim superintendent evaluation.
Oh. Okay, we have to do this with a roll call vote, right? Karen Conlon?
Aye.
Chris Robinson?
Aye.
Katie Avalos?
Aye.
And Carla Pennington Cross votes aye. Okay, we're officially off to closed session and let's take a, barring any opposition from board members, let's take about a 5-minute break before we can just go into your office, right?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Should we tell people if we're gonna reconvene?
Yeah, so we will reconvene probably by 7:45, I would guess, at the latest. There's not gonna be much business. There'll probably be an open session motion on the summary memo. And then there'll be a brief discussion of our summary memo and our self-assessment. If you wish to stick around for that, feel free to, but I don't think it's gonna be compelling.
There's no decision.
Yeah, it's not gonna be compelling. Or controversial. Okay. All right, we are back in open session and coming out of closed session where we discussed Ms. Young's mid-year evaluation, their first year as our interim superintendent. And I think I can fairly say on behalf of this board that we celebrate these first 6 months of your tenure as our interim superintendent and thank you for your extraordinary service to our district and our students.
Thank you.
Well done, Anna. Okay, there's a formative evaluation memo. Is there a motion with respect to this?
I just have a point of clarification.
Yes.
There's nothing in the agenda that notes the potential adoption of this memo.
Oh, isn't there? Yeah, it is. It's in the
Yeah.
agenda item for coming back into open.
Oh, okay.
Or potential action.
For potential action for what's discussed in closed.
Thank you. I move to approve the memo as discussed in closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Memo is adopted. All right, and this memo then becomes a matter of public record, right? So can we put that in the, add that to the agenda from here forward? Okay. Thank you. And then on to item 4D, the board self-assessment. We met a couple weeks ago and I drafted a memo which has been circulated to you all, summarizing the outcome of our discussion or the main areas we discussed. And so the question before us is whether we want to adopt this memo and make it a matter of public record. Oh, I got it. Oh, you got it? Chris breaks into a run.
Red one.
Red button.
So I did the wrong one.
No, you did the right one. But we're almost done.
So is there a motion?
I move to approve the board self-evaluation memo. Thanks.
All right, any further discussion?
Thank you for drafting.
You are welcome. It was a pleasure going through the assessment process with you, Anna. Thanks for making that a functional process for the rest of us. Because I really didn't know what to do, because we've never been through a self-assessment like this as a group, so. All right, and thanks for letting me draft this up and for giving me feedback, everyone. All right, the motion is a motion to approve or adopt the self-assessment summary memo. All in favor?
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Anna, would it be possible for you to finalize this memo as well with the caption and all that? And then we'll add it to the.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Whew. What's left on our agenda? Whole child growth and success, empowered community, those areas, we don't have any items for this meeting. We're on to 7A board meeting debrief. Would anyone like to make any comments?
I would.
Yes, Chris.
I'm not hard.
Oh, sorry. You sounded like I was looking down, sorry. Go.
I really like the setup, thank you. You were asking us about the tables and how to kind of reorient things. I think this is a really good compromise.
Okay.
It affords us kind of that depth that we need for presentations, but also the visibility and all things considered, seems like a good solution.
Katie, Chris, another Chris.
I would like to say this was a kind of like a heavy lifting meeting and we're still gonna be coming in under 2 hours, so that's kind of impressive.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, we're getting good at this.
Perhaps.
Props. Anna, anything?
Thank you for providing me with the feedback around my evaluation and for conducting it and for allowing me to be a part of working through the board workshop evaluation with you, because I think that was an important step in us.
Yeah.
Getting better and working better together to help lead this district in the right direction. So thank you.
All right, there's only one agenda item left, one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye. All in favor? Aye. Motion is adjourned at 7:40.